Hello, welcome to our Senior College and Planning webinar tonight. We're so delighted that you could join us this evening to learn this important information about the senior college application process this year. I know many families and students have questions, especially in this challenging time. We will invite questions, but we'll focus on our content during our presentation and we'll answer what we can at the end. We have several guests with us tonight, including all of the counselors for seniors. Those include myself, Caitlin Oates, I'm the Director of School Counseling, Mr. Matthew Lee Masiello, Malden Catholic class of 04, and Ms. Kelly Simone. We're also lucky to have class of 2018 graduate Ryan Donnelly to share about his college application experience at MC and his life in college since then. But tonight, before we get too far in, we will start, as we start all things at Malden Catholic, with prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Almighty and ever-loving God, we come before you today to seek your wisdom and your guidance. Please bless us with the insight to make good, healthy decisions about our lives and our futures. We thank you for these present opportunities with which you so graciously have blessed us. Please help us to make the most of them now and to plan for our future wisely by always using your gifts to the best of our ability. We ask you to bless all of our personal intentions, as well as those of our families, our friends, and our loved ones. And may I ask for special blessings today on each of you here tonight in our webinar, my brothers and sisters. Amen. If you're a young man at Malden Catholic and have been here since 8th grade, you know that prayer through Brother Dan Kremen. He calls it our prayer for guidance, and I'm so lucky that he's on our team and was able to share that with us tonight. So we do have a very full evening tonight with many, many things on the agenda. We're going to have an overview of the presentation that I'll give right now and a brief reflection. Then we'll hear from Ryan Donnelly. Then we will talk about how college has changed this year and what's unique to the application process this year, what we've done and what our next steps to college are, some extra tips for success. We'll cover some logistics, dates, and deadlines that are important for students and families to know. We're going to spend a good amount of time talking about testing this evening. Then we're going to talk about college visits. We had our first ones today, but how those will be this year. And then we'll talk a little bit about financial aid and scholarships before we begin our Q&A. Before we delve too far into tonight's whole agenda, I'd like to take the parents that we have with us tonight through an imagine exercise. Now, you don't need to close your eyes for this, but I would ask that you allow yourself to remember. Imagine when your son was born. Despite any and all challenges, you welcomed this tiny little human into the world. Remember, if you can, the process of getting him home for the first time. You nestled him into the car seat, where he looked impossibly small, and one parent got into the front seat and drove. You've been in that seat ever since. Remember converting him into a toddler seat and then the booster. Remember taking him to his first day of kindergarten and then first grade. Recollect all the times you left work early or shifted your schedule so that you could drive him to Little League or an art class or martial arts or recital. If you can, think back to the process by which you decided to entrust your son's high school years to Malden Catholic. You researched options, got into that car again, and drove to open houses and shadow days. Perhaps your son really wanted to come to MC. Perhaps you decided it was his best option. Look back on the last 3 years, the time you drove back here because he forgot his homework, the time you worried over his first lab science, or the first time he was told to rewrite a paper's conclusion. You drove to 99 Crystal Street and picked him up from practices. You left work early to see him in a JV game or a varsity playoff. Remember those car conversations about his day, his friends, his Model United Nations competition, perhaps a romantic interest? Remember those moments and be proud of your son. He has come far. Now, if you will, please imagine getting out of that car's driver's seat and handing the keys to your son. He has his license now, and he is going to drive. Now, in the passenger seat next to him is one of us counselors. We are the navigators. We have the map. If we tell him to go left and he goes right, we can recalculate and redirect, but we are not the driver. Now you, mom and dad, you are in the car too, but you're in the back seat. You also have to pay for the gas. The back seat is a hard place for you to be. You've been driving the car since he was born. You are used to being the driver. However, now he is ready to drive this process. So I'm going to ask you to try not to reach over and grab the wheel. I'm going to ask you to let your son own this process. All that you have done has prepared him for this very moment in time, a time for him to be in the driver's seat. You are in the car though, mom and dad. Your voice in this process matters. You have some important jobs, including paying for a bunch of stuff. You need to be your son's champion, not his critic. You need to give him warning if you see a crash coming, but you also need to cheer him on. He needs to know that you believe in him. You are also his protector. You need to protect your son from the other cars in the road. And by that I mean other adults who might wish to help him by asking such questions as, where are you applying? And then providing feedback from their own time applying to college some time ago, back in the day. This new role as consultant rather than manager may make you anxious. I ask you to identify your happy place and go there whenever you find this process stressful. Your son is the driver, and he is also stressed. We, you and I, are asking a lot of him. Please don't put your stress on him, but be his best cheerleaders. The entire Malden Catholic community is here for your sons. It is not different in college counseling. We are here as resources, as advocates, as those who can counsel your son through this highly individual process. We, parents and counselors and students, are on a team with your son's name on it. We also hope that we as a class, the class of 2021, are on each other's teams. You have all had to practice being on a team. You've won or lost as a team in football, soccer, cross country, hockey, swimming, golf, track, lacrosse, baseball, Model United Nations, mock trial. Need I go on? As parents, you've loved not only your own son, but also those on his team. You've fed them, supported them, given them a ride home. So as we continue this process, I ask that you also support the rest of the class of 2021. How, you ask? That's a great question. Please do continue to feed them. Actually, I ask that each young man here tonight be deliberate in this process, that you apply only to the colleges that you would love to attend, that if you gain acceptance to your dream college and you can afford it, that you don't go then trophy hunting for others that you have no intention of attending, that you help your son understand that this process is personal and individual, and that you model that behavior by not inquiring too deeply into another's process, that we can all understand that all we have to use in the past is to help us predict, the future. That you understand that we live in an unknown time, but that your counselors are working hard to stay on top of the latest information about the college application process right now. That college admissions is not fair, is not predictable, and is not a game to be won. It is about fit. Every single one of the students here tonight can attend a college that will make him happy, develop his skills, and help him be successful in the future, however you define success. Admissions is not a reflection of one's worth, one's brains, or much of anything. This is a process that can be immensely fulfilling and enlightening. It is also a process that can hurt and even damage. I ask that parents model how to handle and deal with rejection and disappointment. In this process, it is likely, if not inevitable. Be an example of support, of kindness, and of civility. The mindset of this evening is that we are all for one and one for all. We are all in the car, but your son is in the driver's seat. Grab your helmet. I've always found that the analogy of the car helps me imagine this process and imagine that the student is taking real charge. And this is a time when maybe they really did just recently get their license. And so we have to put that faith in them. But now I want to invite Ryan Donnelly. He is a member of the class of 2018. He was our salutatorian that year, and he's a current junior at Holy Cross. I've asked him to come and speak a little bit about his own college application experience here at MC and how he has found life in college since. Everyone, please welcome Ryan.
Thank you, Ms. Oates. Happy to be here. Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ryan Donnelly. I graduated from MC in May of 2018. I'm currently a junior at Holy Cross, but more on that later. I'm going to give sort of a concise overview of what the college process was like for me, as well as some advice. And then I'll briefly talk about my transition to college and what college is like. So first things first, college process. Let's get one thing out of the way right off the bat. I hated it. I hated the college process. It's stressful, all the deadlines, the applications, the essays, and the fees. Well, so that said, I applied to 6 schools: Harvard, Yale, Holy Cross, Tufts, Washington University, and UMass Amherst. I applied early action for Harvard. Spoiler alert, I didn't get in regular decision everywhere else. Of those 6 schools, I was only accepted to 2, Holy Cross and UMass. The first part of the process seems pretty simple. Choose the schools you want to apply to. But it's a bit more complicated than that. You should go visit a school if you can to see if you like the feel of the campus and if you can picture yourself there. Also, you have to be careful about what type of school you choose. Is it a reach? Is it a safety? Is it something in between? For me, Harvard and Yale were the reach schools, and UMass was my safety. But Tufts and Holy Cross weren't quite one or the other. Sure, they'd be difficult to get into, but they were realistic, achievable goals. Another thing that I considered was the size and location of the school. I preferred to look at a small to medium-sized school near a city with a strong chemistry and pre-med program. I didn't want to go to school directly in the city. I wanted a school with a nice campus that I could walk around. Well, I got that and then some with Holy Cross and its hills. Here comes some advice. All these schools use the Common App, but each school had its own questions and essays it wanted answered. Add all that to your schoolwork, your extracurriculars, or your sports, and it amounts to a lot of stuff you need to get done. So just take a moment to breathe. Prioritize things. If you're applying early action or early decision to a school, make sure you have everything for that school set before working on anything else. Utilize your counselor. Miss Oates was a huge help to me. She kept me on track and would give me a good dose of reality to help me stay grounded. Then take some time to relax. Don't burn yourself out in this process. You still have a whole academic year to get through. But most importantly, rejection is not the end of the world. I was rejected from 4 out of 6 schools, including my top 2 choices. Yeah, it stung a little, but it was just one part of the process, just one aspect of my senior year, and just one time span in life. It's not the end of the world. Remember, they're not saying no to you as a person. Moving on to college itself, I was accepted to Holy Cross, which I was happy about. Holy Cross was my next choice after those 2 Ivy League schools that shall remain nameless. And I went through orientation, I met some great people, but I was sick and tired of icebreakers by the end of it. Overall, the transition to college life went pretty well for me. The biggest thing I had to get used to was doing my own laundry. With regards to classes, I had a well-balanced schedule for my first semester. I had 2 humanities and 2 STEM classes. And I felt I was well prepared for these classes, especially my chemistry courses. The AP classes I took here at MC really helped me. And to anyone currently in Mr. Murray's or Miss Lee's AP class, it may be a lot of work, but it's worth it. Currently, I'm a chemistry major, but I came into Holy Cross thinking I wanted to be a doctor, and I was pre-med. Then I took biology in the spring of my freshman year and quickly realized that I hate biology. I had a bit of a freak out. I thought I wanted to be a doctor since like sophomore year of high school. But thankfully, I had professors in the chemistry department to help me realize what I can do with a chemistry degree outside of medicine. I'm now planning on pursuing a PhD in organic chemistry, hopefully become a professor. Outside of academics, I'm the president of the philosophy club, the deputy chair of the student judiciary, but my favorite activity is research. All right, now to address a little bit of an elephant in the room. Needless to say, things are a bit different now. You don't need me to tell you that. Last March, we were given 4 days to leave campus, and a week after that to figure out online classes. Things worked out better than I thought, but it was still a struggle. I had a lab class that was suddenly online, and exams were a huge challenge now. This semester is off to a better start, in a sense, because both my professors and I have a firmer grasp of online learning. It's not ideal, but thankfully, my classes this semester are a bit more conducive to online learning. I no longer have a lab class to worry about, and my classes aren't terribly big, so it's easier to manage on Zoom. It's not going to be a cakewalk this semester, but with a little effort, we can make it work. And thank you.
Ryan, thank you so much for your words of wisdom and your time tonight.
Happy to be here.
So let's talk a little bit about that elephant in the room, college admissions in the time of Corona. The good news is that despite what a very different world we're living in, a lot of this process is the same as it's been in the past, and we're here to navigate you through that. Another great thing is that Mr. Limaciello, Ms. Simone, and myself have all worked really hard throughout the summer to stay on top of how college admissions is changing as a result of this challenging time. Great news, again, is a lot is the same. Most important thing to know is that the transcript is the king. The transcript has been and will continue to be the most important factor in college admissions. Academic performance over the last 3 to 4 years will be the greatest indicator of your ability to be successful in the college environment. When we went to distance learning, we maintained grades and just changed the way final grades would be calculated a tiny bit. And so all of our students will be entering the college process with actual grades on their transcript, which I think is a great thing. Now, what's one thing that's different? Testing policies. We will talk a great deal more about this later, but the vast majority of colleges in this country have chosen to move to a test optional policy, either permanently or temporarily for the class of 2021. We'll talk a little bit about what the ramifications and differences are there, but please know that no student will absolutely need a test score to apply to college. Things that are also the same in this process, deadlines. Deadlines continue to be a very important and sometimes stressful part of the college admissions process. Deadlines like early action will continue to be in the November 1st range. We haven't seen a major change in that yet. While regular decision deadlines will continue to be around January 1st to February 1st. And again, we have not seen a change in that. So students will need to apply and keep on top of their deadlines in the fall and into the early winter. The importance of connecting with colleges and their admissions offices remain the same. What's different is how we do that. So in the past, we've been lucky enough to invite college representatives to our school in the fall to meet with our students face to face. Now, unfortunately, we are not welcoming college reps into the building this year because of Corona's concerns. And so we've moved to virtual visits. The great thing is that almost every high school in the country has pivoted this way, and every college admissions office has stepped up. Today, we had our very first virtual visit with the University of New Hampshire, and it went quite well. Taking advantage of these virtual visits is a great thing to do because it's a small group and the admissions rep is almost always a reader. In addition to that, right, connecting with colleges can be done virtually through virtual tours, emailing with admissions offices, and other ways to connect in a virtual setting. Some colleges have reopened for visits. Okay, and the other thing I will tell you about differences will be activities. Again, right, colleges will understand that spring activities were pretty much canceled this year. And into the fall that some activities will be curbed, changed, or canceled due to concerns around coronavirus. Students should not be concerned about that as affecting their admissions process. Every student in high school is in the same boat as you are. Another big difference that you're going to see is the COVID-19 question on the Common Application this year. This question is optional, but I do want to talk about it because I think it's an important question. It is under the additional information section of the Common App, and it asks students to talk about their experience with COVID-19 and then coronavirus. What happened to you? What happened to your school? What happened when you went to distance learning? What was your experience with that? Did you find yourself with more time at home? Did you find yourself with more responsibilities, fewer responsibilities? How do you live in the time of coronavirus? That question, it's a brief written question, about 250 words is allowed. And we are encouraging students to consider answering that question in addition to their common application essay. Now, I wrote this last note: understanding students in their context is both the same and different now. Colleges have always tried to understand students in the context of their lives. Who are they? Who do they live with? Where did they go to school? What opportunities did they have? What opportunities did they not have? Now, in addition, they are trying to understand students in the context of coronavirus. Okay, what happened to their school? What opportunities did they have? What opportunities did they not have? What did they do? Right? Always, college admissions officials are trying to understand the context that a student lives in so they can better understand who that person is. Now I'm going to invite Mr. Lee Masiello in to talk about next steps to college. Mr. Lee Masiello?
Good evening, everybody. By now, many preliminary steps have taken place with seniors. During last year's winter term, students set up their Common Application account and began working to become familiar with its functions. Students had opportunities to meet with their counselors to develop preliminary college lists. Students were given a lesson during winter term on researching colleges online, which soon proved its worth as schools across the country closed down 2 months later. Last spring, students were given a common application essay workshop in their English classes and were asked to write rough drafts. Moreover, many students met with and/or received feedback from their counselors and English teachers on their essays. Students were instructed to request letters of recommendation from faculty members. But there is still much to be done. Students need to complete counselor questionnaires on Naviance if they haven't already done so. They must begin work to finalize their college lists and to update the colleges I'm applying to list in Naviance. Students should complete their common application and link their Naviance account to it. It's important for students to decide when they are applying: early decision, early action, regular decision, or rolling admission. They must fill out the transcript release form. This year, the document will be a Google form. Students should apply for financial aid as well as scholarships. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee Masiello. Let's talk about a few tips for the college application process. I think it's very important to understand that the child is the driver and hence the primary contact. The email address provided in the application will be how colleges communicate with students and their families. And that includes the application for financial aid. It is the student who is the applicant. And so all questions, inquiries, requests for more information will go to the student, not the parent, for both the application and for financial aid. It's very important that whatever email address the student uses on their application, that students regularly check their email and share that information with their families. The second note is to love your safety. You need to find a school that would love to have you and you would love back. So often in this process, it's really fun to think about highly selective schools, perhaps the most selective school that you can get into, and we lose sight of our safety. Our safety is that school that we feel very confident the student will get into because they exceed the general admission standards for that school. There are wonderful schools that are safeties for each student here, and it's really wonderful when students find a school that they really love and that is their safe choice. One, because often they may receive scholarships because they would be a great candidate for them at those schools, but also because sometimes in this process, students choose to attend their safety for a myriad of reasons. And if you love it, you're very excited. Everyone, ask for help. Parents, students, reach out with questions. This will be your first time applying to college, but it's certainly not your counselors. We have done this thousands of times and we are here for you. We love questions. We love answering questions. We would talk about college admissions all the time. So please reach out with them. We're happy to help. We want to help. That being said, asking us to do something for you on December 31st for your January 1st deadline is not realistic. We need to keep track of our deadlines, be prepared, and plan accordingly. My final note on this is at the end of the process. The very end of this process, you will have some yeses, some nos, and you will make a choice. You will make a choice of your final college. You will tell us that choice, and we as MC, after you graduate, will send your final transcript to the college of your attendance. They have the right to withdraw admission if that final transcript doesn't look the same as how it did when you applied. Colleges can and will do this. Don't let it happen to you. Translated, you can't get senioritis, gentlemen. You need to keep it together. Logistics, dates, and deadlines. This is an incredibly important part of this process. And it is really important that seniors understand that they are in charge of their own deadlines, not their counselor. Seniors, you only have one of you to keep track of, but each of us have many. We encourage all students, and I mean strongly encourage students, to submit all their applications, regardless of that college's deadline, by December 18th. That is the last day before we go to winter break. We believe this promotes a healthy holiday break and an easier spring. It also prevents those December 31st questions for January 1st deadlines. We all want to be on top of it. We want to have it done. And when you come back for second semester with your college applications all in, it can feel really, really great. The question that often comes up is, when are you going to send my transcripts? If a student applies for a November 1st school or earlier deadline, we will send what we call an initial transcript, which will list the student's senior classes, but no grades. Q1 grades will be sent out when they're available. After report cards are emailed to parents and students, we wait 5 to 7 school days, and then we send out transcripts. The reason for that is we want any grade changes or anything like that to happen on the report card, because it is much more difficult to change a transcript. For second quarter grades, we will again submit 5 to 7 school days after the report cards are emailed out. This year, Q1 grades will be sent out approximately November 17th, and quarter 2 grades will be sent out approximately January 20th. Transcripts and accompanying documents are sent only to colleges listed on a transcript release form. This is required. There are no exceptions. Students will be sent the Google transcript release form. This year, we will be using a paperless system for the first time, which is pretty exciting. Students and parents are responsible for sending out test scores to colleges. We are happy to help with that process, but sending out test scores generally costs money, and it needs to be paid for with a credit card. So we want students and parents to know that it's your responsibility to send out official test scores. Again, we can help with that process as needed. So now I'm going to talk a fair bit about testing. I know many people have a lot of questions about how testing will work. The testing in the time of coronavirus. As you know, many test centers have closed. When we closed on March 13th to do distance learning, we weren't able to give students the ACT as they would have taken normally, nor were we able to be a test site. We've also canceled as a test site in October. So in response to this, there has been a huge rise in test optional admissions. The vast majority of colleges have moved to be test optional for this year, at least. Many are piloting it for a longer term. Students, let's talk about what test optional is. So in a test optional admissions process, students may or may not submit test scores depending on whether or not they believe the score will help in the process or not. Working with your counselor will help you make that choice. Students indicate to each college if they intend to send scores or not. So a student may choose to go test optional for one school, but not the other. So each college will ask you the question, will you be submitting your score? Sometimes when a student chooses to not send a score, A college will require an extra item, often maybe a writing sample or a written paper that has a grade on it. Those are the two most common additional extra requirements if you choose not to send a score. Not all schools do that. But I also want to reassure you, before we've hit this challenge, there were already over 1,000 colleges and universities across the United States that were doing test optional admissions. There is a very clear and understood blueprint for how to do admissions without test scores that has existed for many, many years. And because it's existed for many years, all of these colleges have done studies and has proven over and over again that colleges admit almost the exact same student body with or without scores. One concept that is relatively new and has come into vogue now is something called test blind admissions. And there are a few schools that are offering this. Test blind admissions means that the colleges will not accept test scores in the admissions process at all. So for those schools, even if you have a score, they will not use it in the process. They're completely test free. Here at Malden Catholic, as I reflected on this last spring, I thought, well, test optional is only optional if you have a score that you can choose to send or not. And so in talking with our administration and the school counseling team, we decided to offer an in-school SAT for the very first time. So we will be having our in-school SAT for all seniors on Wednesday, September 23rd. Please look out for an email with very explicit directions about how to enter the building, depending on your cohort, and any additional information. But students should arrive as if this was a Saturday SAT. They should arrive by 7:45 a.m. They need to bring their own calculator, and they need to bring number 2 pencils. We will not have extra calculators, and of course, students cannot share. So please change the batteries in your calculator if you haven't recently, and make sure that it's working well. Even though, of course, we know many of you by face, you still will need to bring a photo ID with you. And you will still need to do your school app proclaiming that you do not have any COVID symptoms. We cannot admit anybody after 8 a.m. Just like a regular SAT, we will close our doors and no admission. So please do not be late, plan to arrive early, but no earlier than 7:15. In addition to providing the opportunity to take the SAT, we are also providing the ACT on Tuesday, October 6th, which is the rescheduling of our spring one. Please note that that's a Tuesday and we'll change our 5th day and the gold cohort day 1. The same rules and directions will apply as did for the SAT. Another note on the SAT on September 23rd is that we have a few SAT with essay tests for any student who is applying to a United States Military Academy, so West Point, United States Air Force Academy, Coast Guard, and Air Force, or is choosing to apply to school with an ROTC and is hoping to gain an ROTC scholarship. Those programs are still requiring the SAT with essay. If you are one of those students who chooses to apply that way or is applying for ROTC, please let your counselor know as soon as possible so we can plan to test you with the essay. We had a question that came in before we did the presentation about testing a second time. If you have a test date, a second test date for the SAT or ACT, it's easy for you to get to and you feel safe, you may feel free to go. That being said, we do not encourage you to leave the state, get on an airplane, drive an extremely long distance, stay in a hotel to take the SAT or the ACT a second time. Instead, prepare for these ones, do your best, and after that, we will make a choice about whether or not we will send your scores. I am now going to ask Mr. Lee Masiello to come back to talk a little bit about the way college visits are happening this year at Malden Catholic. Mr. Lee Masiello?
I would like to spend a few moments talking about college representative visits. Virtual visits begin at 2:20 p.m. in designated classrooms near the school counseling area for those students whose cohorts are in the building and remotely for those whose cohorts are at home. These visits, which began earlier today, will run through the end of November. Typically, there will be 1 or 2 school visits each day. A list of upcoming college visits for the following week will be emailed to seniors, juniors, and parents. College visits will usually be put in the daily announcements. All students are expected to sign up or register for these visits through Naviance. These visits happen after school at 2:20 p.m. and last approximately 40 minutes. There are roughly 85 schools currently signed up to visit. More will sign up periodically, so students should continue to monitor the full list in Naviance. Proper etiquette is expected for both in-person and virtual visits. If attending virtually, students should be attentive, have their videos on, be dressed appropriately in their uniform, with their faces visible. Students are reminded that they represent Malden Catholic, and their behavior affects our relationship with these colleges. College rep visits are great opportunities for students to meet with college representatives and learn more about schools that may be on their radar. College reps will meet with interested students to discuss academic programs, campus life, financial aid topics, and admissions procedures for the colleges they represent. Students should ask questions during this time if they have any. For example, if there is an interest in a particular major, then students should ask about particular programs. If students are planning to live on campus, then they should ask about campus life. Students can use this time to let college reps know about their interest level. In many cases, the representatives are admissions officers from the colleges. Thus, these visitations can be great chances for students to make contact with these individuals who may be reviewing their application materials. I hope you have found this information helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Limasiello. I want to emphasize how important it is that in this time of virtual visits, that students be on screen. Coming on to the virtual visit and having your screen off and yourself muted is like not being there at all. We expect students to put in their full actual name first and last, if it asks you to type your name for the visit, and to have their screen on and their faces on. That did not happen today, and I want everyone to know that that is our expectation, and we will be holding students to that. It's very important for our reputation and our relationship with colleges that these visits show that our students understand the appropriate behavior and that they understand how important it is that they show a face. And it's so much harder for an admissions reader to say no to a face. So get your name and your face recognized when it's time for you to apply. Now I'm going to ask Ms. Kelly Simone to come on as our resident financial aid expert to talk about our financial aid process.
Thanks, Ms. Oates. I appreciate that. Good evening. I'm here to talk to you about the financial aid process. And let me just start by saying it's a little bit scary, but everyone can get through it. As a parent of 3 college students, I can tell you that it's not the easiest part of this whole process, but definitely something that is well worth the effort that you put into it. First of all, every college has money to give students. There are lots of different forms of the financial aid that they can give depending on whether they're a state school or private school. And that's something that your counselor can sort through with you. First of all, every school requires the FAFSA form. It's something that ties into your tax form. It uses your tax form from 2 years prior, so you don't have to worry about hustling right now to get your taxes done. It's something that opens October 1st and will be using the tax forms that you completed 2 years ago. So there shouldn't be a rush. There's plenty of time to get this done. And generally, the financial aid deadlines are the same as the application deadlines for students. So while the student is pulling together their common application, you can be pulling together your tax documents and start working on the FAFSA. Another form of financial aid application is called the CSS profile. The CSS profile takes quite a bit longer than the FAFSA to complete. The FAFSA generally takes about an hour. The CSS profile could be a lot longer, and is much more detailed. So if you attend a college or apply to a college that takes a CSS profile, you're going to be in for a bit of a rough ride, but there's plenty of support for you on the College Board website, and we're always here for questions. One of the things that you should do with your student in preparing their college list is have what I like to call the talk. And it's really thinking about what's comfortable for your family and set the expectations with your students up front so that they know if they apply to a certain school, they may have to take out a loan in their name. They may have to hit up grandma for a loan, something like that. It's really important when you're doing your list that you include some financial safety schools as well as academic ones. We have some very fine institutions here in Massachusetts that can provide a low-cost education for your child, but we also have across the country many wonderful private institutions with big endowments, and they offer lots of merit money and also meet need in some cases. So don't write off a college because you think the cost is out of reach for your family, but do some homework, check out those net price calculators that every college website has, and try to pull together a list that's balanced between some private and public schools. I'm now going to talk to you a little bit about scholarships as well. Our scholarship program at MC is so personalized. I think it's an amazing service. Thanks to Ms. Sharon Del Genio. She organizes all of the scholarship applications that we receive from local organizations such as Kiwanis, various unions and so forth. She puts them on Naviance so they're available to all families and students. And then she even goes to the trouble, if it's a local scholarship, say from Saugus, she'll call down all the students from Saugus and hand them an application. It's an amazing service. During the challenges we're facing now, that may be something that is emailed to students, but I just think it's wonderful that not only do we keep track of it in a central place, but we'll actually hunt your student down and personally let them know about opportunities that are available for them. I would also say that most of the money from scholarship money comes from the schools themselves, from the higher ed institutions. It's a lot of work to earn money through scholarships. There are lots of scholarships out there, but don't expect that you're going to be getting the big bucks from these small little local scholarships. The big bucks really come from each individual institution based on your merit, maybe a special skill or talent, and sometimes your family's financial situation. But we, again, will give you lots of support and encouragement through this entire process and welcome any questions you may have. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Simone. Now to plug this last note on our financial aid jumpstart. One reason we don't talk too much about financial aid today is because we do have a financial aid overview for the underclass years. But we also are very lucky here at Malden Catholic to have a wonderful relationship with Patricia Riley, who's the Director of Financial Aid at Tufts University. And each year, she comes to MC and she goes through the FAFSA line by line. And she tells you exactly what to put in line 1, what to put in line 2. And it is an incredible service. So this year it will be a webinar instead of in person, but Ms. Riley is joining us on October 8th at 6:30 for the FAFSA night webinar, where she will once again go line by line through the FAFSA and tell parents exactly what's being asked of them and exactly where to find it. It's an incredible thing. It makes parents feel much more confident about this process. So I hope you will join us. So save the date, October 8th at 6:30. Again, thank you for your time and attention tonight. We feel really lucky to have you, and we hope you have a really wonderful night.